Hello, everyone. This is Matilda, host of Coffee with Matilda, A Journey to Self. And I'm with my co-host, Jon Freeman, with another episode of Relationship Secrets. Jon, we're going to talk about something very juicy today. We're talking about you are an animal, and we're going to discuss about different elements of it. How are you, Jon?
I'm very well, thank you, Matilda. You?
Very good. And how's the weather in the UK for
It's
you?
nice here today. Yeah, we're going to have a couple of weeks of a nice September before
The
the
fall
autumn
start.
really sets in. Yeah.
Very nice. So let's go to our topic. It's a very big topic, and I mean, when we were discussing, it's going to be a lot of things to cover it. So let's maybe explain the audience what it is to be an animal, what it is to be a human. And then we go, maybe we can talk about different elements of it and how relationship builds around our animalistic attributes.
Absolutely. So the reason that I think this topic is important is that so much of what we think about relationships and who we are and what we should be, it comes from our mindsets and our culture. And we've covered lots of different ways that our mindsets get into this picture, but we haven't talked about what's sitting underneath that very much in terms of what it means to be a human animal. So much of who we are, so much of what we do is driven by aspects of our being that have evolved, and which you would find some form of those aspects represented in just about any animal, any mammal you looked at particularly. Because we actually don't differ very much from the animal kingdom, and you can look at animals in general and you can see that there are some animals that pair bond, and there are some animals that have very kind of open, certainly in among the apes, that have a very open set of relationships, which might be based on the female mates with the alpha male, and the males fight it out for who's going to be dominant. And of course, there's lots of species where the male provides some sperm and then is not seen for another year. I mean, bears, for instance, do that. It's entirely
They do
down
what?
to
1 year?
well, that many species of bears, the female, when she is ready to mate, when she's at that point in her cycle and her pheromones are being carried out on the wind, she will meet a male bear and they will mate, and she will be fertilized, and that male will then disappear off into the wilderness, and she will bring up the cubs when they arrive. So
Very
the
convenient
male
for him. He should have done some things for her, no? And
well,
then
that
bring her food or
that's
something.
that's the human perspective, and it's an interesting one. I mean, of course, in a lot of animals, I mean, most of the bird species, that thing of both the male and the female will be responsible for bringing food to the chicks, and in many bird species, the male would also take turns in sitting on the eggs for hours at a time until they
I like
hatch.
that.
So there's all these different ways, and all of them are kind of present in the animal kingdom. And because we share elements of our genetics with all of that kind of evolutionary history, I mean, it all sits in our bodies in some respect. It's quite useful to start to look at, well, what is particular about humans and what bits of our genetic program, if you like, are really driving how humans are and how humans have come to be. So the first thing to get in touch with is that the human animal has the longest period of child rearing of any. And so that, and you can add to that the fact, I mean, this starts with the fact that humans are born with these huge heads with huge brains. And so in order to get this kind of advanced creature out through the birth canal, we have to be born in a state of extreme immaturity. I mean, kittens might be born blind, but within 4 days, they can see and they're up and they're running around. And there's lots of animals, particularly which live in environments where there are predators. You know, if a baby giraffe, you know, drops the 2 meters from its mother to the ground, within hours it's up and it's learned to get from the point where it's just staggering and finding out where its feet are, to being able to run with the herd. You know, it's able to survive.
Yeah.
Humans are not like that.
Turtles are like that too. Like they just, boom, they go to the sea. They go to the ocean.
Yes, exactly. They do. So, you know, the requirement to bring up a human to successful adulthood, and remember that the point of evolution, or what evolution is driven by, is can you produce viable offspring who will get to the stage where they are mature and capable of producing the next generation. That's the only thing that keeps a species alive. So the requirement for humans, and you know, we have this in common with some other animals, but we're an extreme version, is that we have to be able to really nurture our infants for a long time. And that takes typically more than one person. I mean,
Like
okay,
a
modern
village.
society is like a village, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
you know
there is a
the,
saying,
yeah.
there is a saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and there's a strong truth in that. So there's 2 things that then come from that. One is our expectation that the biological parent of the child is the one who is invested in its survival. So we think, and we tend to assume, that because you know, I as a man, if I have a child, then there is an evolutionary pressure for me to make sure that it's my child who survives. And for that reason, I need to bond with the female and make that happen. But that's only half the truth, because most of our ape cousins and human beings alike, we don't just live in pairs, and we are in different ways. We tend to be dependent on wider family, or on something which is more like a whole tribe, or, you know, back to the village. It takes a village to raise a child. So we have this sense of there's a mutual need and a mutual benefit in that I not only take care of my children, I also take care of my brother's children, or my cousin's children, or even my neighbor's children, even if he's not related.
Is it
So
because we feel like it would be safer for our child to live in a society that, I mean, it's for selfish reasons, not necessarily for humanitarian reason, that you feel like, oh, I want to take care of, for example, the neighbor child as well, in a way, because my child is interacting with that child, so it will be beneficial for my child.
yes, So there is a benefit in an evolutionary benefit in cooperation.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's some quite complex mathematics that people do about degrees of collaboration and how much that might contribute to the survival of offspring, or, you know, to the level of benefit for my genes as opposed to my neighbor's genes. But basically, we as humans, we're used to the notion that we will take care of other people's children, and that we cooperate, and that we collaborate in societies in all sorts of different forms. And if you were an anthropologist, you could go and look at tribes which do that in all sorts of interesting ways. For instance, where if a man's brother dies, he then becomes automatically responsible in that tribal system for taking care of his brother's wife and his wife's children. And that's kind of built into their social structure. And you will see kind of different echoes of that in perhaps the way that we operate in our societies. You know, not all human beings are the same, even in the modern world, because we have different religious traditions, and there are places where you would find polygamy or polyandry, and all these forms show up. The thing is, it's about recognizing that who you are as an individual is not some simple kind of driven by a very clear program of this is how you will be as a relationship forming animal.
So are you
So
saying because we have choices, that's why it becomes complicated? The animals, for example, you were saying the male bird, I guess they don't have a choice. That's automatically how they behave. Or the male bear doesn't doesn't do much, and that's his. I mean, doesn't even have a choice to choose. That's how he acts. But humans are complicated because we have choices and we can choose different paths all the time.
yeah, I mean, again, there's grades of this. Even birds, there are some birds which, when they mate and bond for life, and there are some birds they will mate for a season, and then next season they will have another mate.
So
So,
what are
you
we
know,
humans? Do you know what are the nature of humans?
so the nature of humans is, as you just said, complicated, because there's a very strong biological drive in the female that is kind of akin to the reason that our ape cousins would be tending to be fertilized by the alpha male, because you're looking for who is the strongest, who is, but in our societies, we've actually adapted to that. It's not just who is the physically strongest. I mean, that still counts for a lot of people, but it's also who
Financially.
has the resources. So who is the financially strongest? Who is going to provide a home for my children, and who can I be sure will give them the maximum chance of succeeding in their future life. So however much you might think, you know, I'm choosing who I'm going to fall in love with, actually there is a program underneath that which you could be almost certainly would be completely unconscious of, but which nevertheless drives how you assess
Yeah, I like successful
what is
men. I
attractive
mean,
in a man.
I don't like
Yeah,
homeless people. I mean, I've never been attracted to a homeless guy. So I'm assuming, you know, there's a there's a there's something underneath of my what I like and what I don't like, which you're saying is the programming. And I think, yeah, I mean, why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't any woman try to be with the most, obviously you look at the kindness and if they're kind and they're good human beings, but above that, after that, why not with a man that it's resourceful? Otherwise,
So absolutely. So just recognizing that for different individuals, for different women, how much priority they
Yeah.
give, say, to this man is kind over this man is well resourced, that will be an individual variation. It will be an individual choice. And that may be reflective of, you know, what was your experience with your father, or her experience with her father, or it might be representative of other things which are a kind of more deep in her nature. How important is it to her that the man is kind? You know,
What about
is
men? What is the what is the programming for men?
right. So, well, let me just finish the strand
Yeah.
with women for a minute,
Mhm.
because I want to add in the notion that um, that women are looking for a provider. It also drives the fact that women are not as monogamous as humans like to think they are.
Really?
Because really,
I like
really, and
that.
there is, you know, there's lots of scientific evidence
Right.
for this, and you know, you could get into the detail of what that looks like, but certainly there are strong reasons to believe that one of the reasons that women are just as likely to um, to have multiple partners, or to have partners outside the marriage, or to, you know, whatever label you want to put on that, I'm not totally monogamous, that women are just as likely as men, because from an evolutionary point of view,
Yeah.
the drive to take care of children is also supported when there is an underlying expectation that men who are not my primary partner will also have a stake in taking care of me and my children.
Mm.
So, you know, there's this image that's out there in society about who, you know, who is unfaithful. And I'm going to come to your question about men from this, because the image is, oh, well, kind of men are like the bears, you know, they will just, they're just going around and they're looking to fertilize any woman who's
They
available,
smell and then they go.
and, and then they go. And of course, you know, you will see cultures, you know, cultures that are more like that, that you would find in some parts of West Indian cultures, in certainly in my country, uh, men who would refer to the women they've been with as my baby daddy. Sorry, I'm I'm her baby daddy. Okay, so her purpose is to be mother for his children, and he does not expect, it's not part of his makeup that he thinks he's going to be involved in bringing up those children. He just believes for himself that the more children to whom he can be a baby daddy, the better he's doing. And so, you
He
know,
better be financially supporting her
but he's
as a
not.
baby. So,
Well, you know,
but
that's what you and I would think. You and I would think that yes, he should.
mhm.
But he actually, because and certainly in this thing, culture can change really fast. So in a culture like the one I live in the UK, where there is financial support for single parents and their children, the same degree of need for the man to make sure that his child is going to survive is not present.
Oh,
He
wow.
can walk off knowing that society will take care of his children. So from an evolutionary point of view, you know, let's step aside from whatever moral point of view you or our listeners or I might have about what he should do from a moral point of view. From an evolutionary point of view, he is fulfilling his function. If he allows society to take care of the providing for his children, he's done his job as a biological male.
I mean, what kind of a job is this? Like, you just go. Like boom, boom, thank you very much, and then you're happy. I mean, what kind of you need to have some responsibilities, no? I mean, that's not
Well, that's
fair for the
I mean,
woman.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but from the point of view, what do I think a good society looks like? I might have the same points of view and prejudices about this that you're expressing. But the reason for bringing this up is to get that underneath
Yeah.
the programs that you are driven by and that I am driven by are not the same as what we think or what we take on as our moral perspective. And so from an evolutionary point of view, he is doing his job as a male because he is maximizing the number of offspring that he will put into the next generation.
Wow.
So he's doing a good job from an evolutionary point of view. He will have more children than I do.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you then look at how that affects sexual behavior, although there's these underlying drives which are present in us and which mean that there are certain parts of both women and men which are kind of driven to have sex with more than one person, that drive may be present from an evolutionary point of view, but a lot of our society actually is quite separate from the evolutionary point of view because we have the drives within us, but we're expressing them in a context where having sex doesn't mean you're going to have children, because we have contraception and because we have, in some places,
Value.
we have the choice for uh, abortion or for the morning after pill or whatever. We have social control of our fertility, but nevertheless, we run our society to some degree, even for couples who have chosen that they're never going to have children,
Mhm.
that they have an expectation or a program running about monogamy.
Wow.
And that runs in conflict to what the biological program might be saying, because the biological program is not
Same.
completely focused on monogamy.
So I'm sorry, but what happens when, for example, that bear cannot have baby anymore? Like she's old, she cannot, she's past the age of bearing babies. Or what happens to women that they are older than the age of having a child? So what happens to them? They still have sexual desires. From evolutionary point of view, then there's no point of it. The
Yeah, I
desire
mean,
needs to go away.
all the evidences that I can see is that animals, the desire is totally related to their biological uh, ability to have children, to have offspring. So the female bear that can no longer uh, bear children, um, dies. They have no they have there's no real impulse for them. I mean, well, you can look at it about both ways around. I mean, typically the reason they can no longer bear children, their offspring, is because they're no longer fit enough to do so, and therefore they are about to come to the end of their lifespan anyway. So the two things, you can't really take those apart if you're talking about a bear or to a lot of other creatures.
But like women, I mean, I don't know exactly what age is that, but they're young. I mean, they're in their mid age, mid, you know, they're midlife. So
Well,
what happens to women? I mean, that's not fair. Men can do that till when they're dying, when they're very old, but women have a certain, age. So,
okay, so let's talk about this just about humans, because animals are different. I mean, the menopause is, you got to remember that until relatively recently, the majority of human beings did not live to be 70, 80 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the way that we behave is driven by expectation. I mean, you can look at one of the things that this makes a big difference to is that if you have a marriage ceremony in the 1700s, where the man and the woman stand in front of a priest and they say, "Till death us do part," in many cases that meant, okay, we're committed for the next 10 years,
Yeah,
because the odds were that one or other of them
would die.
might not survive longer than that. And so, I mean, um, if your listeners are ever watching Jane Austen films or whatever, they will see that reflected in the way that society works, and in the fact that a woman may remarry because the man has died, or the man may remarry and take on stepchildren, and that was in a way as normal as it is today, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So now men may take on stepchildren because they've chosen to change partner.
Yeah.
In the 1700s, it was much more driven by, okay,
She didn't survive, or he didn't survive.
you've got what, yeah. So I won't say where, I won't go where I was about to go there. It's not enough. It's not relevant enough. But
But it's fascinating because I
so
never thought about it. I mean, when you gave me the bear example, and I was like, it's interesting that the woman bear, female bear, dies relatively after, when she cannot have any more children. But women right now in our society, that's not the case. It's in there, I think. I mean, I haven't done my research properly, I guess, but in mid 50s maybe, or early 50s, something like that, or maybe late
yeah.
50s. I don't know.
Well, and I
I
can be
have looked.
all of those, because women, women vary a lot in when they go into menopause. So yeah, humans are different. I mean, obviously, you can find, if you went back to the kinds of humans who are living in tribes, yes, you do get old women, you do get women who are past the menopause. But the thing is, if you have a society, and this is true of some of our ape cousins, if you have a society which is invested in collaboration, then it's not only can you birth children, it's also, can you be of value in nurturing the children? So do you raise a dynasty, if you like? So you get the older animals in social animals being able to have children is not the only
Only.
determinant of your biological usefulness or your contribution to the survival of the species. So in humans, we value our grandparents for all sorts of good reasons, for whether it's their wisdom and their love, or their ability to babysit.
Free
The
babysitting.
all of these things are kind of important, and they're part of the mix. So there's no, again, there's no just kind of cut and dried rules about this. This is how we think and behave, but also how we are driven by our underlying programs for what is known to support the survival of our offspring, and, well, technically it would be the survival of our genes.
It's interesting, like when you're looking at animals, like animals in the jungle, you feel like their life is so much simple because there's no rules and regulation. The system, the underneath system does everything. Whereas you come to look at humans, there is different layers of rules and regulations above the system that you're talking about, this biological system that you're talking about. And I think the complexity comes from there because we bring religion. Religion says exactly, actually, the opposite of what our biological needs are telling us. And it gets more complex by your culture comes, what your parents are saying, what magazines are saying, what media is sharing with you, movies are telling you. So it becomes like jumbo mumbo, and you're like, you don't even know what's going on there. It's really difficult.
Totally. It is. So the thing, as kind of with so much of what I say, is all of those influences are out there, and within that you have a choice of who you wish to be. And the point of bringing up, in a way, the evolutionary underpinnings of this is to know that from a biological point of view, all of those choices are available too. And there is nothing that says biologically you must be monogamous. That is, like what you've just said, that is a cultural or a religious or whatever imposition on top of who each of us is as a free
Human.
being.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So you believe, so it's you believe that it's very common and it's very normal to have infidelities in relationships.
Yes.
Okay. And
And you've only got to, I would say, you know, I don't want people to kind of listen to me and take on my beliefs. I just say, okay, look at what's around you. Look at what actually happens. Look at what people do, as distinct from what people say they will do or think they should do. Because
that's very true.
this is kind of, you can see it or make your own mind up based on the evidence that you see just as easily as I can.
Because in my belief was like, okay, women are more monogamous than men. That's how I was thinking. I don't know. Do you think that's true from biological point of view? Also,
Yes,
what's happening in society?
I do think that's. I think the levels of investment are different between females and males because um, some of the influences that we've talked about, like sort of being resourced and having the kind of prestige that can increase, or it more typically increases with males than it does with females. This is part of the patriarchal system. I'm not saying it has to be this way. I'm just saying that it's the way it is, and it's the way it's been, and until now. So that it's more common for a woman to marry an older man than it is for a young man to marry an older woman. That's not a should, that's just kind of, that is to some degree what happens, because those older men actually, in some cases, they have the power, they have the ability to create that situation. And so that's created a trend in the way that in our societies women think about who they are and their expectations of what is possible for them, that is, it's driven by so much of a kind of a culture of youth, that I am only useful for as long as I am sexually attractive. It drives a lot of very kind of misunderstood programs about women's beliefs about their own body, about their own sexuality, about their own ability to be attractive when they're older. That is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it's not that women can't be as attractive when they're older, it's that they don't think they're going to be, and therefore they give up on themselves and they don't do what would otherwise be kind of part of how do you maintain yourself in your fitness and your health and your attractiveness and, you know, your presentation into the world. So it does get difficult that the mindset that is present for women means that there is more of a sense of risk that I will be left on my own. It may not be true, but it's what people think.
Yeah.
And then you can add to that, you know, women who have children have to be invested in the continuity of that relationship. And so any other relationship, with even that with a man, becomes kind of, it has to serve that primary relationship of I've got to bring up my children. So
Actually,
all of those things go into the mix.
You know what,
Sorry?
John? What you're saying is very true. Now I'm thinking about it. I don't have a child, but the reason that I, I'm thinking to have a child is, okay, what will happen to me when I'm older? You don't know if the husband will be there or not. You don't know. Maybe the husband will go. You can't control that. But if I have a child, that child will be with me or will take care of me when I'm older. So it's kind of because is this phobia of, oh, you're going to get older and you're not going to be as attractive as you are now because of your age, because, oh, you cannot bring any children, so for men you might not be that attractive. But men don't think that way. Actually, it's very interesting. They don't think that way.
Well, it is different, and of course, you know, there is a biological program even underneath the way that you think in my old age I need children to take care of me,
Yeah.
because for you know that is why people in agricultural societies
Mm.
have lots of children, because they know that not all of them will survive to be adults, and because when both for men or women, when you get to be too old to go out and work in the fields, you rely on the fact that your children are going to do that. So you're weaving in this sense of the outside reality and the influences of the outside reality and the influences that has on your own personal program. I mean, of course, there's no guarantee. I have to warn you. There's no guarantee that if you have children, that they will take care of you in your old age.
Yeah, they're like, go to the nursing home. Thank you very much. I'm like, oh, my mom, like, I had children for these days. I changed your pampers for these days.
Yep.
So, oh, wow.
That's the way it goes. But these things, you know, I mean, it's really great that you voiced that awareness, because often that's running quite in the
Yeah.
background to somebody's thinking, and it might be influencing the choice they make without them really being aware of that influence being there. And so what I'm kind of interested in out of the conversations that we have is that anybody increases the awareness from which they make their choice. That's really all it is. It's still then your choice. Do what you want.
Do you think so? Okay, we have this biological programming. What about the hormones? Like, do you think hormones affect us in a way? Because, we as a woman, I mean, I don't know about men. Well, I don't understand men, but as a woman, I mean, I go up and down sometimes during the day, obviously during the month. So, do you think these hormones make me choose differently because of that?
I think there are days, and again, depending on each individual will have different balances of hormones, but yes, there will be reasons why on one day or a few days you might make different choices than you would at different other times of the month. And there might be ways in which the cycles that are taking place in anybody's hormonal balance actually have an influence on how do they show up in the world
Yeah, well,
on that day, and what is driving the reason that let's say you imagine the situation where you or a woman has gone to a party and maybe just got a little assistance from alcohol, that according to the state of her hormones might influence just how strongly does she choose to flirt with this man
yeah,
or not. So so our hormones are there
fidelity.
because they drive fertility, they drive the satisfaction that we get not only from sex, but the satisfaction that comes from the relationship with children. So the bonding with children, you have the influence of oxytocin as the kind of the bonding hormone, and that this is what kind of makes relationships feel good. And I mean, I don't, I wouldn't want to get into the kind of the details of the several different hormones that are in play in any of us that are driving uh, how that level of bonding or how our readiness for sex or whatever. It's because it's not the detail that's important. What's important is the recognition that these influences are there, and so to be able to tune into your body and notice what your body is actually feeling like, so to have an awareness of what's going on inside as distinct from what's going on in my brain.
You know, John, I'm just a little bit upset right now. I'm just a little bit upset from biologically. A woman has a lot of responsibilities and has a difficult life, but men have like a very fun life. They just go on and they just want to spread their sperms, and as much as they can, as much fun they can. And women, they are stuck with that baby, and the responsibility of a mother that comes in, and it's not fair.
I
How is this
I
possible? How can we
I
have
get
people
I
that
get
work?
that, but it's not as simple as that for men,
Hmm.
because men actually they want to be bonded, they want to be nurtured, they want to have the relationship that they have with a woman or with their children. Not all men, but you know even when you looked at the bear and you thought, well, he's had his fun and he's gone off for a year, actually he's going to be on his own for a year. And so even for a bear, that's kind of there's a kind of toughness in that he's got to survive as a lone individual. So it's this biological program doesn't let men off the hook, because
Yeah, I'm
men
happy
have
to hear that.
needs too.
I'm very happy to hear that because I was like, what is this? I should go see the God. I'm like, what is this? There's no fairness here, and I'm sure everything is balanced, but I'm trying to find the balance. But it's
Yeah,
interesting. I mean, the bear should just hang out with that woman and maybe help her with food and stuff, and you will have a happier life with her than going off and trying to smell something else.
Well, you know, it can seem like that, but from the bear's point of view, from the female's bear point of view, she would fight. She would fight him off. It's not just he wanders off. He daren't stick around because she would smack him about a bit if he sticks around. She doesn't want him there.
She should be smart and saying, "Wait, go bring food, go do this, go do this, do my errands." Like, help.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if we understood what it is that makes for survival in bears, there would be a good evolutionary reason why female bears do that. I don't know what it is. That's getting beyond my level of expertise. But there would be one because they evolved. They evolved because the pressures made them that way, and the ones that behaved a certain way succeeded and brought up more children than the ones who didn't.
It's one other thought. I mean, I don't know. I think we can. It will take us to longer our session, but maybe we can do it another session about it. Like, how come if you're telling me about this biological need and programming, how come there are women that they give up their children, or they abuse their babies? I mean, you see it in news sometimes. How is that possible? I mean, how is that possible? Then something in this programming has gone wrong, this biological programming.
Yes. Well, we are, I think the answer in a way is quite short, which is that we are very complex creatures with very complex brains, very complex biological drives, with all sorts of things that can go wrong in our internal programming that will drive people to do things that you and I would think are quite unspeakable, and are that we have lots of laws to discourage people from doing. But yeah, there are bugs in the program sometimes.
So, and my last question is, how is this possible? Like, if it wouldn't be easier if whoever that created the rules and regulations for the society, they would look at the biological needs of men and women and what the program is, and create these rules and regulation based on the needs. For example, religion is going exactly the opposite of it. Like, why we even create religion when we know biologically our needs are very different? Then that's the reason why lots of people will do things against, what religion is saying, and then we put them in jail.
Yes. Okay, huge question. So the way we behave as individuals is also something that we do in order to kind of successfully adapt to the conditions that we're living in. So there are times or stages in society where to have those rules actually benefits the majority because it creates a stability, and it maybe prevents lots of warfare, or it creates ways of us doing things together that are for the benefit of the whole. And human beings actually, they oscillate between the impulse to do things that are for the benefit of we, and the impulse to do things that are for the actualization of I. And that is a natural tension that is built into existence. I mean, it's not just true of humans, it's built into the underlying pressures of evolution. Where is the benefit from being a social animal as distinct from being a lone animal? And so human beings adapt to life conditions. And we as humans have been changing a lot over the last several hundred years, because we have possibilities now which we would not have had 200 or 300 years ago. We have levels of prosperity which enable us to have choices, both individually and collectively, that we wouldn't have had in 1600, 1700 or whatever. And so we are naturally adaptive, and we will each have our blend of I and we choices in how we make our individual decisions about how we're going to live our lives.
Interesting. You know, one point you said, and maybe we can have it another topic, another time, was, you know, in history and how different times and there was different needs in the society. And if, for example, because I'm reading Josephine and I'm really fascinated by her in in 1800s, and I'm just realizing, judging Josephine, and you know, I read a lot of articles about Josephine and how they were judging her, but judging Josephine now with this view of society as a modern human being, about a couple of 100 years ago, about a woman that had different rights and different capabilities, it's wrong. So you have to judge the person in the history by the eyes of, or the opportunities of that period, not your period.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's very unfair for us to do anything else. And actually, I think it's equally true in present time, because we are just as inclined to make judgments about, I don't know, other countries or other cultures.
No, very.
When, you know, if you were living there, you might find it much more necessary to behave the way they do.
So you know what? After this, after our conversation, I'm gonna go check out this bear situation, and I want to see like what happened to this male bear. Then he goes, and he comes back for someone else. So I want to see. I hope that he has some difficulties too, because you know that's not fair. But it was very interesting, John. I've learned a lot, and actually, I'm gonna go and look at societies from this biological need as well, because it's, as you said, this is a program underneath, and not a lot of cultures or not a lot of laws and regulations are touching upon it. So yeah, I mean, I would love to continue it more, but it's going to be longer for our session. But next week we're going to come back with a different topic.
Yep. Yeah,
So
we'll go somewhere else interesting next week.
Thank you very much, John. And
Pleasure.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Till next time. Ciao.
Bye-bye.